The Oregon Trail wasn't just a pathway to a new life. It was a harrowing journey filled with hardships that tested every ounce of strength and resolve. From treacherous river crossings to deadly diseases and the constant threat of starvation, those who braved the trail faced unimaginable challenges. In this video, we'll uncover 10 brutal facts about life on the Oregon Trail that reveal just how perilous this iconic migration truly was. If you love uncovering fascinating, untold stories of the American Old West, hit that subscribe button and join us on this historical journey. Womeltai tried to help the Donner Party. The story of the Donner Party is one of the most infamous episodes tied to the Oregon Trail. Yet even after more than a century and a half, new discoveries continue to shed light on what happened during their harrowing ordeal. While the general location of their final camp at Alder Creek was known for decades, it wasn't until 2012 that archaeologists pinpointed the exact site. This discovery offered insights into the struggles faced by the group and revealed a lesser-known aspect of their story: efforts by others to provide aid during their dire situation. Artifacts uncovered at the site, including bones from rabbits and deer, suggest that food sources were available near the camp. However, accounts from the Donner Party survivors indicate that these animals were not part of their diet. The group, weakened by months of hardship and critically low on ammunition, likely lacked the energy or means to hunt effectively. This detail underscores the isolation and vulnerability of the party as their supplies dwindled. Another remarkable aspect of this story comes from oral histories passed down by the Welmeltea, a local Native American tribe. These accounts describe a group of settlers enduring immense hardship over a brutal winter. The tribe, recognizing the travelers' plight, reportedly left supplies such as rabbits and potatoes near the camp to help sustain them. They even attempted to bring a deer to the settlers. However, as the tribe approached, the frightened and desperate travelers responded defensively, which likely stemmed from fear rather than malice. Despite the risks, the Welmeltea continued to observe the camp from a distance. Their accounts suggest they saw the settlers resort to extreme measures for survival, an act that led the tribe to keep their distance, concerned for their own safety. This decision reflects a deep understanding of the dire psychological state the settlers were in, highlighting the complex human emotions and survival instincts that arise in extreme circumstances. The narrative of the Donner Party offers not only a glimpse into the relentless challenges of the Oregon Trail, but also a reminder of the broader human experience. It reveals the interplay of cultural misunderstandings, the resilience of the human spirit, and the compassion shown by those who tried to help, even when faced with significant risks. The failed alternative, Boseman Trail. In 1864, the possibility of a more accessible route along the Oregon Trail through Wyoming and Montana nearly became a reality. Known as the Boseman Trail, this alternative path was shorter, more resource abundant, and easier to navigate compared to the original route. However, this proposed shortcut came with significant challenges. Namely, it crossed land already inhabited by the Cheyenne and Lakota tribes. These communities, understandably protective of their territory, were alarmed by the influx of pioneers encroaching on their homeland and demanded they leave the area. While some settlers heeded these warnings and turned back, others, like John Boseman, pressed forward. For a brief moment, it seemed as though a peaceful resolution might be possible. Negotiations were initiated between U.S. government officials and tribal leaders, with the aim of establishing terms that would allow coexistence. However, these discussions were abruptly undermined by military intervention. Soldiers arrived with explicit orders to construct 3 forts along the proposed trail route, an act that disregarded the negotiations entirely. Adding to the tension was the demeanor of the military contingent. Their arrival was accompanied by an air of overconfidence and a presumption of dominance, which only deepened the resentment among the Cheyenne, Lakota, and other nearby tribes. The situation quickly escalated as these actions were perceived as both disrespectful and a direct threat to tribal sovereignty. The breaking point came in 1866, when a group of soldiers was attacked while gathering wood near one of the newly established forts. Reinforcements were sent to assist, led by a captain whose earlier remarks had further strained relations. Unfortunately, the reinforcements underestimated the unity and resolve of the Native American tribes. They encountered a coordinated response from a large group representing multiple tribes who had come together to defend their land and send a clear message of resistance. This confrontation, later known as the Fetterman Fight, was a pivotal moment. It highlighted the strength of the tribe's opposition and the consequences of ignoring diplomatic solutions. Recognizing the untenable position, General Ulysses S. Grant ordered the forts to be abandoned shortly afterward. The Boseman Trail, which had once held the promise of an easier route west, was closed, illustrating the broader consequences of disregarding indigenous sovereignty and the complexities of westward expansion. This story serves as a stark reminder of the challenges of territorial expansion during the Old West era. It underscores the necessity of mutual respect and dialogue in navigating cultural and territorial conflicts, lessons that remain relevant in discussions of history and beyond. The Mormon Handcart tragedy. Not all who traveled the Oregon Trail did so with the traditional wagons, oxen, and mules. Among the thousands heading west were Mormon pioneers, many of whom were immigrants from Britain rather than the eastern United States. By the time these settlers reached the trail's starting points in the Midwest, many had exhausted their resources and could not afford wagons. To address this, Brigham Young proposed a more economical solution: handcarts. These small, lightweight carts were designed to be pulled by the settlers themselves, offering a cost-effective, if physically demanding, alternative to traditional wagons. During the height of westward migration, around 10 companies were organized to support Mormon travelers, providing logistical and financial assistance for their journeys. One such group, composed of approximately 1,100 pioneers, departed Nebraska in August 1856. Unfortunately, this late start in the season would prove to be a grave miscalculation. The trek, which typically took about 4 months, became a test of endurance that resulted in profound hardship and loss. Starting the journey in August posed significant risks. The leaders of the company were advised against such a late departure, but they pressed forward, citing the urgency of completing the trip despite the potential dangers. As the group moved westward, food supplies dwindled. By the time they reached Wyoming, the need to reduce the weight of their handcarts became critical. Each person's baggage allowance was slashed from 7 kilograms to just 4.5 kilograms, forcing many to abandon essential items, including heavy winter clothing. This decision, made under duress, would have severe consequences later. By October, the weather took a dramatic turn, bringing bitter cold and snowstorms that made river crossings perilous and progress agonizingly slow. With inadequate clothing and shelter, the travelers faced freezing temperatures and exposure. Rescue missions were dispatched to aid the group, but the harsh conditions and ongoing food shortages compounded the challenges. Despite these efforts, the ordeal claimed the lives of roughly 25% of the group, over 200 individuals. This tragic episode highlights not only the physical challenges of westward migration, but also the importance of preparation, timing, and adaptability. The handcart pioneers demonstrated extraordinary resilience and faith under circumstances that tested human limits. Their journey stands as a somber reminder of the sacrifices and struggles faced by those who sought a new life in the American West. James Reed and the founding of San Jose. James Reed, an Irish immigrant, holds a unique place in the story of the infamous Donner Party. While the Donner Party's tragic fate is well known, Reed's personal journey is equally compelling, marked by moments of conflict, unexpected fortune, and resilience. Reed, along with his wife and 4 children, initially traveled with the Donner Party. However, by the time the group became stranded in the Sierra Nevada mountains, Reed was no longer with them. In October 1847, tensions were high as the party made its way through Nevada. A conflict arose when a teamster, frustrated by the grueling journey, began mistreating an ox. Reed, unwilling to tolerate such behavior, intervened. The situation escalated into a confrontation that resulted in the teamster's death, leading to Reed's exile from the group. Rather than face harsher consequences, the party decided to send Reed ahead, separating him from his family. This separation proved to be a pivotal moment. Riding ahead, Reed avoided the fierce winter storms that would later trap the Donner Party in the mountains. Once on the other side, he worked tirelessly to organize a rescue effort. His determination and resourcefulness ultimately paid off, as he became one of the leaders of the rescue parties that saved the surviving members of the Donner Party, including his wife and children. Following the ordeal, Reed and his family settled in California, choosing what would eventually become the bustling town of San Jose. Reed played an instrumental role in shaping the community, contributing to its early development and quickly establishing himself as a prominent leader. His influence can still be seen today, with several streets in San Jose bearing the names of Reed and his family. While his actions during the Donner Party's journey reflect the high tensions and challenges of the trail, his later contributions to San Jose's growth demonstrate his resilience and ability to adapt, even after such a harrowing experience. The strange popularity of Lewis and Clark. The story of Lewis and Clark often paints them as intrepid explorers who ventured into the uncharted wilderness of the American West, blazing trails and making groundbreaking discoveries. While this popular narrative endures, the reality of their expedition is more complex and nuanced. Their journey, often romanticized in history, raises questions about why they have been elevated to such a legendary status. Before they even embarked, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark faced significant challenges that could have doomed their mission. Commissioned by President Thomas Jefferson, their primary directive was to identify a practical route for travel and trade from east to west, ideally following rivers that connected the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. This goal, however, was based on misconceptions about the geography of the western United States. Jefferson believed the region resembled the familiar landscapes of the eastern states and underestimated the vast, rugged terrain they would encounter. When Lewis and Clark failed to find the navigable waterway Jefferson envisioned, the expedition's original purpose seemed unfulfilled. To salvage the mission's reputation, Jefferson shifted the focus to their documentation of the region's natural resources, geography, and indigenous peoples. Yet the public's attention quickly moved elsewhere, particularly as the War of 1812 overshadowed the expedition's findings. For a time, Lewis and Clark's achievements faded into relative obscurity. It wasn't until much later that efforts to frame the expedition as a heroic journey gained traction. During the 1940s, attempts were made to revive interest in Lewis and Clark, but again, global events, this time World War II, dominated the public's consciousness. By the 1960s, however, their journals were published, providing a detailed account of their travels. Coupled with a 4-hour television documentary, this renewed interest solidified their place in American folklore. The duo was celebrated as pioneers who charted the way westward, even though their role in establishing routes like the Oregon Trail has been exaggerated. Lewis and Clark's legacy underscores how historical figures can be reimagined and celebrated to fit the narratives of their time. While their expedition provided invaluable knowledge about the western frontier, it is important to view their journey in its historical context, one marked by missteps, misunderstandings, and evolving interpretations of success. Their story, though not the straightforward tale of heroism it is often portrayed to be, remains a testament to the complexity of exploration and the enduring power of myth-making in American history. The fallacy of Native American aggression. One of the enduring images of the Oregon Trail often depicts fierce attacks on settlers by indigenous tribes, portrayed as angry over the intrusion into their lands. This dramatic narrative has been reinforced in popular culture, with scenes of wagon trains forming defensive circles as warriors on horseback charge with arrows flying. However, the reality of these encounters is far more complex and nuanced. While tensions between settlers and indigenous communities were real and occasionally escalated into violence, the scale of these conflicts and their dynamics were not as one-sided as often depicted. Historical records indicate that settlers were responsible for more deaths among Native Americans than the reverse. Between 1840 and 1860, conflicts resulted in the deaths of 362 pioneers and 426 indigenous individuals, primarily near the Humboldt and Snake Rivers and west of the Rocky Mountains. These numbers underscore the mutual losses during a period of mounting tensions. The deteriorating relationship between settlers and native communities can be attributed to multiple factors. The increasing influx of settlers disrupted ecosystems, depleted resources, and disregarded established practices of respect for the land. Travelers frequently failed to compensate indigenous groups for crossing their territories, cutting down trees for firewood, hunting game to near extinction, and introducing diseases that devastated local populations. These actions eroded trust and deepened animosities. Yet, in earlier decades, relationships were more collaborative than hostile. Trade played a significant role in fostering cooperation. Sioux and Cheyenne groups, for example, regularly visited Fort Laramie to exchange buffalo hides and furs for goods like blankets, tobacco, and ammunition. Such interactions created opportunities for mutual benefit and peaceful coexistence. In 1851, the Sioux signed the Fort Laramie Treaty, agreeing to allow settlers to traverse their lands in exchange for an annual payment of $50,000. However, this treaty's promise was short-lived. Federal officials failed to honor the agreement, and settlers continued to pour into the region. Compounding these issues, military forts and outposts were established on lands designated for indigenous use, further fueling tensions. Efforts to negotiate peace persisted, but the discovery of gold on reservation land in 1874 proved a turning point. The lure of wealth outweighed commitments to treaties, leading to further encroachments and conflicts. These events highlight the complex and often strained interactions between settlers and Native Americans on the Oregon Trail, a history shaped by broken promises, environmental impacts, and the competing pressures of survival and expansion. John Shotwell and the Dangers of the Trail. It is estimated that along the Oregon Trail there are approximately 10 graves for every 1.6 kilometers, a sobering testament to the challenges faced by those who embarked on the arduous journey. While popular depictions often focus on violent incidents or the infamous dysentery popularized by a well-known computer game, the reality of death on the trail was far more varied and complex. One of the most pervasive threats was cholera, an illness that thrived in the crowded and unsanitary conditions of the trail. Contaminated drinking water, often shared by large groups of travelers and their livestock, spread the disease rapidly. Cholera's progression was unpredictable. Some succumbed within hours, while others endured prolonged sickness lasting weeks. Those who did not survive were rarely buried in marked graves alongside the trail. Instead, graves were often dug directly on the path, with passing wagons compacting the soil over the deceased to protect the site from scavengers and erosion. Accidents also accounted for many fatalities. The transition from settled life to the unpredictable hardships of the trail was often swift and unforgiving. Inexperience with draft animals and the physical demands of the journey created hazardous situations. Fatigue from long days of travel, combined with hunger and the physical toll of illness, heightened the risk of accidents. There are numerous accounts of travelers being injured or killed in incidents involving runaway animals or falls beneath heavy wagons. Firearm mishaps were another significant hazard. Many settlers unaccustomed to handling guns found themselves reliant on firearms for protection or hunting, leading to tragic accidents. The very first recorded firearm-related death on the Oregon Trail occurred on May 13, 1841, involving a man named John Shotwell. Ironically, his name became tied to the unfortunate incident. While retrieving a shotgun from the back of a wagon, he inadvertently pulled it by the muzzle, causing it to discharge. The shot struck him in the chest. Historical records note that he lived for about an hour before passing away. These incidents reflect the precarious nature of life on the Oregon Trail. Each grave represents a story of resilience and struggle, shedding light on the immense difficulties faced by those who sought new opportunities in the Western Territories. Their legacy is etched into the landscape, a reminder of the human cost of westward expansion. The Triscuit Gang. In 1852, the Triscuit Gang became infamous for their role in one of the most tragic events of the era. As latecomers to the gold rush, they found themselves at a disadvantage, with the prime mining sites already claimed by early settlers. For individuals like brothers Jack and Henry Triscuit, the path to wealth often involved resorting to theft rather than mining. Along with a small group of associates, the Triscuit Gang was responsible for a series of robberies throughout California. When legal authorities began closing in, the gang fled north to the Oregon town of Sailor's Diggins. At the time, Sailor's Diggins was one of the largest settlements in Oregon, boasting a population of several thousand within a territory that held only around 10,000 people. The town was a bustling hub for miners, but it was also home to families and older residents who sought to build a life amidst the goldfields. When the Triscuit Gang arrived, they predictably made their way to the local saloon, where their drinking escalated tensions. Events took a dire turn when an altercation spilled into the street, resulting in a confrontation that spiraled out of control. By the time the violence subsided, 17 people had lost their lives. With most of the town's able-bodied men away at the mines, the casualties included many women, children, and elderly residents who were unable to defend themselves. The sound of gunfire drew the miners back to Sailor's Diggings, where they quickly confronted the gang. A brief standoff ensued, ending with the gang's demise. However, in the chaotic hours between their arrival and their downfall, the Triscuit Gang managed to empty the assayer's office of its gold. The missing gold, estimated at around 113 kilograms, remains unaccounted for to this day. The events at Sailor's Diggings stand as a grim reminder of the volatility and lawlessness that often accompanied the pursuit of fortune in the mid-19th century. The tragedy also underscores the vulnerability of frontier communities and the challenges they faced in maintaining order amidst rapid growth and frequent upheaval. Port Orford meteorite. This story is an unusual one from the mid-19th century. In 1856, Dr. John Evans was exploring the Oregon Trail, surveying the region that would later become the state of Oregon. During his travels, Evans claimed to have encountered a massive and peculiar rock. He reportedly broke off a small fragment and left behind what he described as a 10,000-kilogram formation. Upon returning to Washington, geologists examined his sample and identified it as a rare type of meteorite known as a palisite. Evans's discovery initially sparked excitement among scientists, but the timing of historical events soon overshadowed his claim. The onset of the Civil War diverted attention, and Evans himself passed away not long after, succumbing to pneumonia. Before his death, he provided a vague description of the meteorite's location, suggesting it was on a mountain near Port Orford, at an elevated point relative to its surroundings. However, his directions were imprecise and complicated by the region's tendency for rock slides, which could easily obscure such a find. Doubts about the meteorite's authenticity emerged when later scientists compared Evans's sample to known meteorites and identified a match with one discovered in Chile in the early 1820s. This revelation suggested the possibility that Evans's find was not as unique or significant as initially believed. Adding to the mystery, a miner in 1937 claimed to have rediscovered the meteorite and produced a fragment identical to Evans's piece. Yet before further investigation could occur, the miner vanished, leaving the case unresolved. In 1993, the story was revisited, and modern analysis shed new light on the controversy. Records now held in the Smithsonian archives indicate that Evans, while a dedicated explorer, lacked formal geological training. Additionally, he was struggling with significant financial debt. The prevailing conclusion is that Evans likely acquired a fragment of the Chilean meteorite and fabricated the story of its Oregon origins. His motive was possibly to sell the discovery for financial gain, but his untimely death prevented him from pursuing this plan. This tale of Dr. John Evans underscores the challenges of early scientific exploration, where limited knowledge and personal circumstances often blurred the line between discovery and fabrication. It also highlights the enduring allure of meteorites and the mysteries they hold, even when their stories remain unresolved. Sam Barlo Toll Road. When considering the necessary supplies for the long journey from east to west, toll money might not be the first item that comes to mind. However, at the Dalles, where the Oregon Trail split, travelers were forced to make a difficult decision. They had two main options. One was to attempt the treacherous crossing of the Cascade Mountains, and the other was to take a ferry down the Columbia River. Unfortunately, the number of ferries available was limited, and waiting for a turn was not a viable option, as supplies in the area were dwindling. Seeing the challenges faced by travelers, Sam Barlo recognized an opportunity. By 1846, after successfully crossing the mountains with a group of workers, he had secured a charter to create a road over the Cascades. With the help of approximately 40 workers, Barlo managed to construct the road, which opened that same year. To make his venture profitable, he imposed a toll, $1 per person or head of cattle, and $5 for every wagon team crossing. Despite the initial promise, the road proved to be a financial failure. While it eventually became a well-used route for settlers, many travelers found themselves unable to afford the toll by the time they reached this point on their journey. The long, difficult trip had already drained their resources, and paying the toll became an additional hardship. Many of the men responsible for collecting the fees sympathized with the exhausted and impoverished settlers and often allowed them to pass without collecting payment. By 1919, the road and its surrounding land were acquired by the state of Oregon. While Barlow's road played a pivotal role in the westward movement, it also highlighted the economic challenges faced by pioneers. Despite the toll system's failure, the road itself remained an important part of the settlers' journey and ultimately contributed to the region's growth. As we've seen, the Oregon Trail was more than just a path to a new life. It was a grueling test of endurance, courage, and survival. From the constant threat of disease to the brutal conditions of the landscape, those who ventured along the trail faced challenges that most could never imagine. Their stories, filled with hardship and perseverance, continue to remind us of the extraordinary sacrifices made in the pursuit of a better future. If these harsh realities of the Oregon Trail have piqued your interest, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at the gritty and fascinating truths of life in the American Old West. Stay tuned for more untold stories and shocking facts. There's so much more to uncover.